Welcome into the High School OT studios and welcome into the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Happy week 9 of the high school football season in North Carolina. Games have gone final across the state and there are some huge results to get to. First, let's go into some of our top 25 scores. Grimsley, they continue to roll. The Whirlies remain unbeaten. 48-14, the 100th victory for Darrell Brown. A big win over their rivals at Page. Huff defeating South Meck tonight, 35-3. Providence Day in an undefeated battle with Charlotte Latin wins 41-0. West Charlotte shuts out Butler 21-0. Weddington shuts out Porter Ridge 42-0. These conference shutouts continue. Millbrook 49-0 against Enloe. More top 25 scores from across North Carolina. It includes a huge result and a huge shutout. Number 19 Independence. You're reading that right. 35-0 against Mallard Creek. Cardinal Gibbons defeating Middle Creek in a big conference game 40-14. Hoggard a 2-score win over Laney. 28-14 the score in that one. Tim Hauer will join us to talk about that soon. Still looking for the Myers Park West Mech score. If you have that, you can submit that into High School OT. We'll get it up on the Talk It Out NC statewide scoreboard. You just saw Cleveland and Southeast Raleigh. They went final 28-10. The Rams, their 60th consecutive regular season victory, comes in a top 25 battle with the Bulldogs, 28-10. Watauga, the Pioneers remain unbeaten, 42-20 over Alexander Central tonight. We roll on here with some more top 25 scores. Mooresville defeating Davie County 42-2. Ashbrook over Forest View 27-6. Crest defeats North Gaston in a big final score here, 76-0. A huge victory for the Chargers. Jordan defeating Panther Creek 35-6. A upset win. Hickory hands East Lincoln its first loss of the season. The Red Tornadoes, a huge win, 31-28. Jacksonville, the Cardinals remain unblemished, 28-7 over South Central. Four more top 25 scores to get to you. Tarboro 55-0 against Bedingfield. Brevard 41-27 over West Henderson. Northern Nash defeats Hunt 49-14. Leica Beebe will join us to talk about that one. And Northern Guilford, a huge win over Southern, 58-7. There were tons of thrilling scores across the state of North Carolina all throughout tonight's action, including a big one in the Bull City as Southern Durham came from behind to defeat Hillside. That's where Jonas Pope IV was for High School OT, and he joins us now getting out of Durham County Memorial Stadium. Jonas, a big win tonight for the Spartans, and they had to come back to do so.
Yeah, Evan. It was one of those games where I just kept feeling like, man, Hillside had an opportunity to put them away, and they just didn't do it. It's kind of, when you let a good team hang around or a talented team hang around and make it to the fourth quarter, that they have a chance. And Hillside had some chances they didn't take advantage of. Southern Durham gets the ball back with like 6 minutes left, started drafting their own 3-yard line, and the way Hillside's defense had played all night, he's like, okay, they're gonna get some stops. But then again, when you're Southern Durham and you have probably the best player on the field in Jonathan Dillon, and you just turn him loose and let him make plays. I mean, I'm not saying this in a disrespectful way, but just let him play backyard football, just run around and make plays. And that's what he did on that last drive. He just ran around, found open guys, found some guys with some broken plays, and they end up scoring a touchdown with Lance Henderson's 5-yard run late in the drive. And yeah, man, that was the story of the game. I said in the story I wrote for High School OT, around the city of Durham, this would be known as the drive. This would be known as the Jonathan Dillon drive because he kind of put the team on his back that last possession and had some help from his receivers, had some help from Henderson, but he really was the guy to make it happen. And again, credit to Southern Durham for just sticking around long enough to the fourth quarter and giving themselves a chance.
So, Jonas, you've now seen two iterations of Southern Durham.
Yeah.
You saw the team that had Tyson Broadway and Jonathan Dillon caught up in a quarterback battle against Jordan earlier in the season. Broadway now over at Reidsville High School. And now this is Jonathan Dillon's team, and from what it sounds like, you saw him arguably at his best tonight when it mattered most for the Spartans. What does this Southern Durham team look like compared to the one that you saw in one of the opening weeks of the season?
I mean, that's the funny part. It still kind of look the same, but I guess with him getting all the snaps at quarterback, your best player your best player has the ball in his hands every play, as opposed to someone or trying to find creative ways to get him the ball. He's touching the ball every single play, and you have to account for that. His first touchdown he threw to Van in the third quarter was a broken play. He was scrambling, and came away from it and just threw the ball for a 70-yard touchdown, showing his arm talent. You would think he always played quarterback, but he's just an athlete who just makes plays, just makes things happen. And I think that's what you saw more of today. Again, not in a disrespectful way, but just letting your best player just make plays, be an athlete, and play backyard football, run around and make things happen. I mean, they still stuck to their game plan. One thing he said was we played at our pace. We didn't get too fast. We didn't go too slow. We played at our tempo. And it looks like their tempo, Evan, is just putting the ball in his hands and just let him make things happen.
It's not a bad option.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all.
So this Southern Durham team, Jonas, obviously they challenged themselves historically in the non-conference slate, and obviously hoping it builds, to making a big playoff run. They enter this one. They had a 4-game stretch where they lost. Granted, it was Jordan and Cardinal Gibbons, and out-of-state lost to Coolidge, and a really close one against a good Northeast Guilford team. But now that they've gotten into league play, this is 3 straight conference wins. They're now at 500 at 4-4. They got East Chapel Hill and Chapel Hill. You imagine those are winnable games over the final 2 weeks of the season. This team could be riding a 5-game win streak into the playoffs. How important is that? Obviously, you got to talk to a couple players and coach after the game. This momentum that they're building, how positive is it?
That's what Coach Robinson talked about, how big this was. He said he figured when they saw the schedule. Excuse me if you can't see me, my lights went out. But he said when he saw the schedule, he kind of figured that, the Riverside game, the Northern game was good to kind of get them on the right track. But he knew this would be the game, so to speak. No disrespect to Chapel Hill, East Chapel Hill. But he knew this would be the test. But when you beat your rival, you beat Hillside, and you do it the way they did, yeah, they can go a long way. Like you said, they're probably going to finish the season undefeated in conference play with those, no disrespect to those other teams, but they're probably going to run the table in the conference the rest of the way. Like you said, going to the postseason with a 5-game win streak. And when you have, like I said, an athlete like Dylan, the ball in his hand and the weapons around him, and they're playing free. They're playing with confidence. They know there's not going to be a change at quarterback or a back and forth at quarterback. They're going to go in with some wins under their belt. Some guys going to get some snaps and get some live action and get more confidence each week. And they can be dangerous come November.
Well, that is a huge 14-13 win tonight for Southern Durham over Hillside. They win 14-13 at Durham County Memorial Stadium. That was a Hillside team that entered tonight's game 6-1, but the Spartans remain unbeaten in conference play. Jonas Pope has the story right now up on HighSchoolOT.com. Thanks, Jonas.
Appreciate you having me.
I'm going to bring in Joel Bryant now to the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. There are a lot of wild finishes across the state of North Carolina as Joel joins us now. Some that stick out, Joel. Independence's 35-0 shutout victory over Mallard Creek, and then Hickory coming back and defeating East Lincoln tonight 31-28.
Yeah, it's the margin in that Independence Mallard Creek game. I would have been stunned if Independence won that game. I'd pick Mallard Creek, of course. But, we still had Independence ranked number 19 in the statewide top 25. But the way it happened, right, the 35-0 final, kind of stunning. It reminds me of just like the Independence Mount Tabor game, first round of last year's playoffs I was at, where thought it might be a decent game, but Independence just steamrolled them and won like 40-0 or something like that. So it reminds me of that. It's kind of been a shaky year for them. They had a couple of losses to good teams. But if they're doing this to Mallard Creek, which is an 8A school, and Independence is 7A. Maybe Independence is inserting itself back into that 7A contending conversation. Clearly, if you can beat Mallard Creek 35-0, you're probably a team that can contend in 7A, even though there's some good teams in 7A. So, yeah, pretty big final score there for Independence. And, of course, the East Lincoln game, losing to Hickory. It feels like Hickory East Lincoln, always kind of a good battle there. East Lincoln's first loss of the season. Definitely it's not a team that you should be like upset about losing to. You should be upset about every loss, but Hickory's a good program, and Hickory's been beating them for a while, and they only lost by 3. So no slouch there in losing to Hickory.
East Lincoln picking up their first loss of the season. We're going to go through some more undefeated teams in just a moment. We'll bring in Tim Hauer. He saw undefeated Hoggard tonight take down Laney. But before we bring in Tim, you had mentioned there was a potential record-breaking performance up in Granville County tonight?
Yep. JF Webb, senior running back, McKellis Hobgood, tied the state record with rushing touchdowns in a game with 8 rushing touchdowns.
My goodness.
Yes, JF Webb crushed Cedar Ridge. Hobby's had a really good season, so I'm looking forward to going back and watching those highlights there. We're gonna get something up here shortly about how he tied the state record. For those curious, the people that have had this record tied for first with 8. TJ Logan, of course, and that famous game against Charlotte Catholic, the Northern Guilford Charlotte Catholic game. Mike Hill from Harvard Central did it. Joe Lee from West Montgomery, Savon Tutt from Pamlico County, and Justice Dorset did it for North Moore. So only five guys have done this before. Also Rashad Dockery. So 6 guys have done it before. Now Michaelis Hobgood has 8 touchdowns in a game. That's 7 guys in state history that have done that. So very rarefied air for him, for Michaelis Hobgood and JF Webb.
I'm going to let you go for a second, Joel. Obviously, he's going to be getting that up onto HighSchoolOT.com so you can read more about one of these state record-breaking touchdown performances tonight from a running back. That comes out of JF Webb High School. We're going to bring you back later in the show. Thanks, Joel. Bringing Tim Howard now from Coastal Preps. I had mentioned Hoggard, the Vikings remaining unbeaten so far, but it was not your prototypical Hoggard final score where they run away with a big win. It's 28-14 tonight, Tim. How did the Vikings hold on and get the 2-score win?
Yeah, I think you said it best. We have come to expect 30-point victories in conference play from Hoggard, and that wasn't the case tonight. So, even though they lost, I got to give a huge shout out to the Laney defense and what they were able to do tonight to slow down a little bit of that Hoggard offensive attack. But the Vikings, again, this just goes to show, I think this just goes to show what a great program is when you don't have your best effort. Maybe it's your C game. You still find a way to come out on top. And that's what the Vikings did tonight. There were a couple really big, I thought, important moments in this game. Hoggard was up 14-7 going into halftime, got the ball back with 56 seconds left, and went 55 yards in 30 seconds, scored with 26 seconds left on the clock to take a 21-7 lead into halftime. To show you how many chances Laney had, I'm going to go over kind of just the start of the second half because Laney really probably should have tied this game. Hoggard got the ball to start the second half, fumbled it. Laney took over deep in Hoggard territory, only needed 2 plays to score. So that made it 21-14. 3 plays later, Hoggard throws an interception. Laney would have taken over at the 13, but they celebrated after getting the interception, went over to the student section, started doing some trash talking, got backed up 15 yards, started that drive on the 28, didn't score. They held Hoggard on a 4th down, got the ball back, went for it on 4th down near midfield, didn't get it. Again, then Hoggard went and scored a big 55-yard touchdown. So you think you had the ball potentially at the 13 trying to go in and score. Then you got the ball back again near midfield after you stopped Hoggard on 4th down and didn't get any points out of that as well. So those 2, big possessions, I thought, had Laney scored on one or both of those, maybe it's a different outcome tonight. But they were not able to do that, and Hoggard was able to hold on.
Obviously, conference standing right now is not as paramount as it has been in years past, but next week for Laney, they have to face New Hanover. Obviously, that's a battle for that second place spot in the league right now. New Hanover, I believe, 3-1, possibly 4-1 in league play. How good of a momentum boost is that to know that Coach Brooks' team competed so well against this Hoggard team?
Yeah, I mean, I know nobody wants to take moral victories, especially at this point in the season, but I feel like, if you can hold this Hoggard offense, to just 28 points and really, one explosive play away from kind of it being a really close game, I think you've got to take a lot of momentum in because New Hanover does not have the offense that Hoggard has. So I feel like if you're Laney, you probably put 21 or 28 as your number. If you score that many points, you should win that game against New Hanover because your defense if they show up like they did tonight, will not give up, that many points against them. So, yeah, I feel like we're at the point in the season now where Hoggard is Hoggard, but that middle of the pack that we've kind of been talking about for the last few weeks, right? Which one of them is going to get on a little bit of a roll here going into the end of the season and maybe carry that into the playoffs? Maybe it's New Hanover. They've got kind of a favorable schedule here over the next couple of weeks. So maybe it's them or maybe it's Laney. But one of them feels like they need to kind of get on a little bit of a 3-game winning streak going into the playoffs.
Well, Hoggard picking up a big 28-14 win tonight over Laney. Obviously, things are starting to heat up as playoffs are just a couple of weeks away. Tim, playoffs begin in other sports starting on Tuesday for you out in your coverage area. I know Hoggard has a big tennis match, I believe, Monday or Tuesday.
Right.
Hoggard volleyball as well. They've been cleaning up shop with conference conference championships. But what can we expect from Coastal Preps this upcoming week?
Yeah, going to stay busy for sure. Just like you said, two of our tennis teams still alive, Hoggard and New Hanover, looking to make deep runs. And then, certainly with volleyball, our boys soccer down here continues to be really strong. And then, obviously recaps from all the games tonight. I will make one mention. Pender won again tonight. This is the first 8-game winning streak in school history. I did a little bit of research earlier today, and they have not ever won 8 games, which seems crazy to me because they've had some incredible teams. But next week, East Duplin at Pender, for what should be the conference championship in the East Central Conference. So that'll be a big one next week.
Goes to show how much getting just a taste of a deep playoff run the year before can do wonders for a program.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, they're feeding off of that, great performance last year. And I know they won't admit it, but they are so excited to not see Tarboro in their same classification because that's kind of been their nemesis. Well, that's been everybody's nemesis. Right?
I don't blame them. Well, we appreciate you for joining us, Tim, and can't wait to talk to you next Friday.
All right. We'll see you, Evan.
That's Tim Hauer from Coastal Preps joining us here on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. We're going to take one quick break and hear from our partners at Talk It Out NC. When we come back, we have lots of guests to join us, including James Moore from the Fayetteville Observer, Zach Adams, who caught Central Davidson's win tonight, Jeff Lincoln, David Jones from Scoreboard Radio, and Clay Best.
Raising kids is a roller coaster. Sometimes you laugh. Sometimes you cry, but most times you wonder how your kid turned out so well. That's how. You did the hard work, made the right decisions, like talking about alcohol before it could be a problem. Go to talkitoutnc.org. Get resources on how to talk about underage drinking. So Mom, Dad, keep up the good work. It's worth it. Talk early. Talk often. Talk It Out NC.
Back here to the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Evan Moesta here from the High School OT studios in Raleigh. A reminder, there's never a bad time to start the conversation to stop underage drinking. Visit talkitoutnc.org. Again, that is talkitoutnc.org to get the tools and resources that you need to have conversations with your children about how we can prevent underage drinking. We continue on here on the High School OT postgame show. We bring in James Moore from the Fayetteville Observer. He had Cape Fear's win over Grays Creek tonight. That's a big win for the Colts, and their offense really put up an impressive performance.
Yes, absolutely, Evan. Season high 50 points. I think that was a kind of a statement win for Cape Fear. Next 2 weeks are hectic for them. Terry Sanford, then Scotland, the end of season. I mean, to come in, I know Grays Creek isn't the premier playoff team like most others, like the two other schools I just named, but getting a big win like that, 30-plus point win like that down the stretch of the season when your offense is really coming into full effect, Ty Phillips, and then you have Chosen Win really making plays and the supporting cast as well. Landon Underwood, who's been an underrated star. I think it's really big for the Colts going into the latter half of the season.
Yeah, this last 2 weeks are a gauntlet with Terry Sanford and Scotland coming up. But right now, because of that forfeiture that 71st had early in the season, the Colts are 7-1. They remain unbeaten in conference play. What do you think about these upcoming 2 games? Because obviously this is truly going to test where this team stands prior to the postseason.
Yes. I saw the Terry Sanford score from tonight. 42-6 over Lumberton. I would love to see. I would love to watch the film. I'm gonna watch the film and try to, you know, 6 points. Lumberton. It's again. It's not one of those premier playoff teams, but 6 points is 6 points. Defensively, that's huge in high school. So I would love to see how the defense can hold up. Terry Sanford's defense can hold up against Cape Fear, and vice versa. I would love to see how Cape Fear's defense hold up against Terry Sanford, and it's a big rivalry game. It's huge for both teams, but as of now, I can see Terry Sanford and their offense kind of taking the edge, just because of Jacob Moore and Isaiah Washington. If they could just limit mistakes, which is what kind of beat them against Scotland last week, if they could just limit those mistakes and just limit turnovers and really make plays down the stretch of the game, they'll be fine.
You mentioned Terry Sanford getting the win tonight, Scotland picking up a win over Purnell Sweat as well. It really feels like it's those 3 teams in that conference. Obviously, they all come in with 2 losses or less into these final 3 weeks. This is going to be a thrilling finish and all you can ask for out of this league. Looking around your coverage area, looking at some results that are coming in, obviously 71st not getting to play this week. A lot has gone on, obviously, in the Fayetteville area with football, but where we stand right now, October 17th, we got 2 more weeks to go before we get an idea of what the postseason is going to look like. What are you looking forward to the most in your coverage area in terms of these last couple weeks of football?
I'm really looking forward to who can finish out strong and who can finish out consistently. And I really think we know exactly what we're getting from the juggernauts of like Terry Sanford and Cape Fear and 71st. We know what we're getting from the offense, but as far as Terry Sanford and Cape Fear, I would love to see what the defense does. Cape Fear does a really good job at playing team defense. Every single play, there's at least 5 guys on the ball, which is really good. But I would really love to see how they can stay consistent in these last 2 games, especially because it's Terry Sanford and Scotland who's red hot right now.
Yeah, you mentioned the Fighting Scots. They've really kind of kicked things into overdrive. They had a loss to Pinecrest, and it felt like they were just able to shake off that loss and gain some good momentum here as we go into the final couple weeks of the season. And you also mentioned like that Cape Fear defense. They have 28 sacks this year. I mean that's a really impressive number for a defense so far through the opening 9 weeks of the season. That's James Moore from the Fayetteville Observer. What can we expect this upcoming week?
Playoffs, a playoff volleyball. I'm Grays Creek, Cape Fear, have some private schools as well. Village Christian, they're still alive, so we'll see how they do this weekend, and we'll go from there.
Some big private school soccer coming up as well.
Yes.
Lots of exciting times down in Fayetteville. Again, that's James Moore from the Fayetteville Observer. He had Cape Fear's 50-21 win tonight over Grays Creek. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We bring in Zach Adams now to the High School OT postgame show. Zach took in a big win out in Davidson County as Central Davidson earned a signature victory and a historic one at that, defeating TW Andrews tonight, 41-6. Zach, the Central Davidson, claims at least a share of a conference title. What's kind of the historical context behind that victory tonight?
So as you alluded to, this is Central Davidson's first conference championship in football since 1979. That's something that I mentioned over the PA. I got the crowd. I'm invested into it after a big 41-6 win tonight over TW Andrews. But that's not something that Coach McIntosh team are really focusing on right now. They have an interesting scheduling oddity, if you want to call it that. They have a Week 10 bye. So they still have one more game on Halloween against Montgomery Central to close the season. With a win there, they would clinch the Pac-7 championship outright. But Coach McIntosh, as well as Jordan Ash, the player I interviewed after the game, they both said that they're not trying to lose the bye week. They don't want to have, at least a share of the conference title in their heads and kind of lose sight of that last regular season game against Montgomery Central on the road.
6 straight wins for Central Davidson. Obviously, last week they had the 40-29 win over Randleman. But if you take that out, they had a shutout win against Ledford, 25-0, 69-0 against High Point Central. Yet they only allow 6 points tonight to TW Andrews. This team's really rolling. What makes them so special, and what has put them in this position where it feels like the offense is clicking, averaging over 30, 40 points a game right now, but then the defense is putting up a lot of goose eggs?
For sure. So for those who have not seen Central Davidson play, they won the double offense. So you really never know who's getting the ball. It's kind of something that was interesting tonight. 5 different players scored a rushing touchdown for the Spartans. 2 of those players, Jordan Ash, as well as a junior Click, they both make impacts on both sides of the ball. Jordan Ash ran for over 150 yards, according to an assistant coach, as well as had an interception and a rushing score. And Junior Click was all over the backfield all night, multiple tackles for loss, and he punched one in the end zone third quarter as well. So just having those guys go both ways, kind of impacting both the offense and defense. And then once you run an offense like the double wing, the opposing defense just doesn't know what's coming. And like I said, 5 different players finding the end zone tonight. I just don't know who can get out on any given night. And having that moving towards the playoffs will be a challenge for some opposing teams here in the future.
Central Davidson now 8-1 overall this season. Their only loss is a 1-point loss to Eastern Alamance back in week 3. Again, they have a bye coming up next week. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep that momentum rolling into Halloween night when they face Montgomery Central. That was Zach Adams, who'll have a story and highlight later tonight on HighSchoolOT from that one. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, Evan.
We're bringing Jeff Lincoln, David Jones from Scoreboard Radio here to the HighSchoolOT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. You guys saw a big one involving High Brighton tonight. How'd that one go?
Yeah, it was a very exciting football game. First quarter was crazy. 34 points in the first quarter. We saw a kickoff return for a touchdown, a muffed punt that led to a scoring drive. And at one point, RS Central was up in this game 20-14 in the first quarter. After that, total reversal of fortunes. High Brighton outscored the Hilltoppers rest of the way. 31-6, High Brighton wins 45-26. The Panthers on a 4-game win streak. That puts an end to a Hilltoppers 4-game win streak. Pretty much locks up the 4A side of the Western Piedmont 3A, 4A for High Brighton. DK Mitchell, 3 rushing touchdowns for High Brighton. Elon Lipford, 3 passing touchdowns, 2 to Julius Martin, 1 to Lorenz Bunn. Bunn also had a big 88-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. So, little sloppiness, probably way too many penalties for both of these teams tonight, but High Brighton doing about what we thought they would in the scoring column, a 19-point victory over a pretty good RS Central team whose starting quarterback broke a leg last week, whose starting running back was out, so they were a little bit shorthanded, although the backup had played extensive time at quarterback in the past. But pretty good football game here this late in the season. High Brighton should coast the rest of the way into a bye, just maybe fine-tune some things. Panthers should finish the season as a one-loss team.
7-1, you mentioned that one blemish being to East Rutherford back on September 19th in that one. I'm going to bring Joel Bryant in just a second here, but before I let you guys before I step out here, that Watauga score against Alexander Central a little bit closer than maybe you guys may have thought. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, Alexander Central led early in that one, 7-0, and Watauga got a late touchdown. But, yeah, I think so. But playing over in Taylorsville, Alexander Central finally got a win last week. So they have a little bit of momentum maybe on their side. But that was what we were looking at, some of the scores as they were coming in throughout the area. It was just a lot of these teams that you thought, okay, this is going to be a win for them, struggled early. St. Stephen's struggled early with McDowell tonight. East Lincoln struggled with Hickory, and then took the lead in that one. Then Hickory comes back and gets that victory. Lincolnton struggling tonight. So some of the games that you're thinking, well, it's going to go this way. I thought this was probably usually you kind of know, like when we do our high school picks, we're usually about 100% on them because at this point of the season, you kind of know what you have and you don't have. There may be 1 or 2 toss-ups, but some surprises tonight. And maybe the biggest surprise in our area tonight is Drone finally gets their first win of the season. They defeat West Caldwell tonight, 58-44. West Caldwell was coming off of that big win over Patton last week, and give Chris Powell and his team a lot of credit. They scored more points tonight in one game than what they had scored all season long. And for West Caldwell, had a chance tonight to win 2 conference games for the first time since the COVID-shortened season, had a chance to win 3 games for the first time in the season since that COVID-shortened season. But Drone gets the big victory tonight, so congratulations to them. Also, I thought East Burke with a big win tonight over Chase. Chris Cogdell goes back to Chase, the head coach at East Burke now, going back to his former school, and East Burke gets that win. So maybe a little bit of some surprise scores tonight, but hats off to Hickory with their big win, but also to Drone and Chris Powell and those guys for getting a big win tonight as well.
Some other scores from across the area. Freedom getting a big win over South Caldwell tonight. That Freedom offense looks like they're back and clicking. AC Reynolds a big win over North Buncombe. Maiden and Bandies, they had quite the battle tonight, 41-34. It feels like every time we talk about a Maiden game, it's a one-score game this season. Murphy shutting out Andrews. Mountain Heritage was all over Mitchell. East Rutherford a big win over Patton. High Brighton, obviously, you guys were there for that one, 45-26 against RS Central. 78 points tonight from Hendersonville in a win over Avery County. Robbinsville shutting out Rosman. Cherokee defeating Swain. TC Robertson 41-0 over Enka. And then it was Asheville defeating Irwin. That was a really close battle out in Buncombe County. Anything else really stick out to you guys as, again, we have only 2 more weeks left in the season?
Yeah, I think for the conferences that we cover here, the Northwestern 3A or Northwestern 7A, 6A conference, it's going to be Watauga. It's going to be Freedom 1 and 2. Who's going to be that third place team? It looks like it's going to be St. Stephen's. That's the game we'll have next week. We're going to do St. Stephen's and South Caldwell. South Caldwell disappointing 0-3 in the conference, but South Caldwell, they come back in every game. They're down big time. Tonight it was 42-14, and then they end up scoring 21 points in the second half to make it a ball game with Freedom. So we'll have that game. Same thing in the Western Piedmont Conference, 3A, 4A. We now know it's going to be East Rutherford. It's going to be High Brighton. Looks like RS Central is that third place team. East Burke looks like now that they're going to be that fourth place team. So as you start looking at playoff situations and pecking orders, things are starting to come a little bit more clear as we go into that. But I'm really interested in that Western Foothills Conference with Hickory winning tonight. I think East Lincoln still has Maiden on their schedule. They're both with just 1 loss in the conference. So it's going to be interesting to watch that race as it goes down to the final 2 weeks of the season.
For me, I think for this High Brighton team, Evan, it's going to be how much fine-tuning can they do in the next 2 weeks. They're going to have Patton and West Caldwell both on the road, and High Brighton is going to be heavily favored in both of those games. Do you leave your starters in? Do you get reps? And do you risk, an ankle, a knee, a shoulder while you're trying to fine-tune and go into the playoffs? Or do you get some reps for your backups and maybe try to build a little bit of depth, knowing that you're going to see some other teams in that second and third round that's also going to have really good depth and really good football teams? So it'll be an interesting approach for Sam Mackey and his staff to see how they approach the rotation over the last 2 weeks. And as Jeff said, I think East Rutherford is the cream of the crop with Pinkerton at running back over there. They look like a team that could go very deep as well.
What can we expect from you guys on the show?
Yeah, we'll have highlights of this one, all the scores from around the area. We've got 2 homecomings at the college level, ASU and Lenore Ryan. Our guest will be Juju Phillips from the LR Bears. We'll talk football and men's and women's basketball. And as you guys reported earlier this week, Moret Stadium, the crown jewel of Division II football, will be hosting a state championship football game in December. We don't know if it's Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, but, man, could you imagine maybe a 6A Watauga team playing just 45 minutes from their home campus? If it broke that way, it would be super interesting. So we'll talk with Juju about that. We'll have tons of other stuff. Of course, the Panthers on the road at the Jets this weekend as well. So we'll start at 9 o'clock on Kicks 103.3, and you can catch the show later at our social medias if you miss it live, at Lincoln Jeffrey, at Scoreboard Radio, and Facebook.com/CV Blitz.
I'll be playing volleyball tomorrow. The Caldwell Cobras have their final home games of the year, a tri-match. Patrick and Henry Community College coming to the Cobra Pit. Be there or be square.
I'm going to ask you before I let you guys go here, for a statewide audience, a lot of people's initial reaction who are not in the Catawba Valley when they see, oh gosh, Lenore Ryan's hosting a football state championship. What the heck? It should be name my favorite Division I local school. How special is that environment, and how important is that to that community to be able to host a state football championship? Because when that announcement came out earlier this week, it felt like so many people out in that region of North Carolina, there's so much pride that LR is getting to host a state title, and that's a big deal. And I don't think people on a statewide scale truly understand how big of a deal that is.
It's the game day experience that they've put in at LR, and we talked about this on the show. It rivals anybody. It rivals what you see at Appalachian State. It's probably better. I've got on my Western shirt. Their game day experience is better than Colaway. It's better than Gardner-Webb. It's probably better than Wake Forest, really, to be honest. They've really put a lot into making the game day experience there. But I think for the true high school fan, there's been a lot of sores from when the Western Regional Basketball Tournament left Hickory, 10, 15 years ago, because that was a staple here. And so many people loved that Hickory was able to host that. It kind of outgrew the gymnasiums here. And that was a shame because Hickory loved that event and they kind of cherished it. And now to get this one back in Moret Stadium, I was talking about that this week when we called the state championship game in 2017 that Highbright played in at Keenan Stadium. That was cool and fun to get to go there and call a state championship game, but you get swallowed up in those big stadiums. So Moret Stadium is just big enough to where it's going to give you a good packed environment. It's going to give you a good environment for a football game, depending on where the teams are traveling from. But the city of Hickory, the Hickory Metro Sports Complex, they have the basketball tournaments. They're used with LR hosting stuff. You've got the crawdads. They're used to hosting these big-time events, so it'll be first class all the way. And I'm excited about it. I think it's better. I loved when David Tepper offered up the Panther Stadium to start doing more high school things. But again, you're going to swallow up a high school game in that lower bowl of an NFL stadium. To host it at a Division II stadium, especially a Division II stadium that's really good in football, I think it's going to be special. And it's special for Lenoir-Rhyne because, hey, their coaches can recruit some of those kids now and see some of those kids up close. But I think it's a big win for the city of Hickory and for our region, because it's not just going to be Hickory. You're going to have folks from the Catawba Valley area, the Unifor area, if you will, Burke, Alexander, Caldwell, and Catawba, that are really going to be excited to host that event and put their best foot forward.
Yeah, and Juju Phillips has been the chair of the Catawba County Sports Hall of Fame for several years. He's kind of stepping back a little bit from that role, but he came from Pennsylvania to Lenoir-Rhyne to play college football, and he's never left. And there's nobody who loves Lenoir-Rhyne more than Juju Phillips. He and the old coach, Jack Huss, still do a great job calling games. And I'm interested to pick Juju's brain about kind of what went into the process of bidding that. Were other schools bidding for it? Was Catawba trying to get it? Was App trying to get it? I don't know exactly how that went down, but if you've never been to a game at LR, I've been there. Nice press box. Watched them play Newberry there last year, I believe. It is a first-class experience, and anybody who wants to go to that game, they will enjoy it.
Well, I've definitely heard from some people involved in the athletic department or involved with athletics over at LR who are just very prideful about being able to host a state title. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Good job.
See you next week.
Jeff Lincoln, David Jones from Scoreboard Radio joining us here on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. I'm going to bring Joel Bryant back in because there were a ton of really good games out in Nash County that Leica, BB, and Clay Best were at. Joel, we're going to bring Leica into the broadcast now. He saw quite the game over at Northern Nash.
Well, I'm not sure how great the game was because Northern Nash handled Hunt, but it was a key one because Hunt had beaten Southern Nash last week, and that kind of surprised some people. So we were wondering if Hunt could do it again this week against Northern Nash. Obviously, that was not the case. What was the final again? It was lots of little. What was the final?
Northern Nash won 49-14 over Hunt. The game was closer than expected for about a half, and then it really came down to a dominant second half. Really, from about halfway through the second quarter on, Northern Nash's run game and defense really took over that contest.
So, obviously, this is a big game in the new Big East 5A, 6A conference. Hunt is a 5A team. Northern Nash is a 6A team. I believe the only 6A team in this conference, if that's correct. Obviously, we're expecting Northern Nash to be a contender in the 6A East. We can talk about that in a little bit. But as far as Hunt goes, does this game change how you think they'll be able to compete in the 5A East? And where are you kind of feeling that they'll probably end their season up? How many rounds do you think they could go?
I think Hunt is capable still, despite defeat. I think they're still capable of winning multiple playoff games. I do think that Mez Harris is a really good player at quarterback and at safety for them. They have a really good running game with Dorian Jones leading the way. Isaiah Chadwick both ways as a wide receiver and a defensive back too. I know Northern Nash has just proved tonight that they are on another level compared to. But I still think that Hunt is a good team. Their only losses this year came to tonight against Northern Nash and to Tarboro week 2.
And they played Tarboro well too.
Yes, and for a while the Warriors were hanging in there. As a matter of fact, it was a wild start to the game. Hunt misplays the opening kickoff, and Northern Nash recovers it in plus territory, and they score a touchdown right away. The Warriors come back and score 14 straight points to take the lead.
Wow.
And you're thinking, like, hey, maybe...
So you have to wonder if that opening fumble didn't happen, knowing that Hunt otherwise came out really strong, like they were ready to play clearly because they had 14 straight after that. You have to wonder, if that opening fumble, if maybe that could have been a 21-0 early lead for Hunt. That's something that we'll probably never know.
Yeah, unfortunately for Hunt, there was a key play at the end of the first half where they're driving again, trying to score before the half. They have a miscommunication on the snap on a 3rd and short, and instead of continuing their drive, they have to punt. And I want to shout out Jamarzie Williams from Northern Nash, who he's making plays in all facets of the game for the Knights. He had a major punt return into plus territory late in the first half to set up what was the go-ahead points at the end of the half. Northern Nash led by 7 at the break and then scored 28 in the second half. Shut out the Warriors the rest of the way. Northern Nash is a very good team, and they did it tonight with their run game offensively.
We're going to hear from Clay shortly about the Southern Nash Rocky Mount game. Rocky Mount wins that game 22-20. But quickly, what do you think Rocky Mount's going to have a chance against the Northern Nash team when they play? Because obviously it's going to come down to that game.
I do think Rocky Mount's going to have their say in this game. I would favor Northern Nash still, but the Griffons are also a very good squad. They're also their lone loss of the season is to Tarboro as well, if I'm not mistaken. And it came down to 4th and goal from inside the 10, where Tarboro standout Cam McDowell-Moore tips a pass that would have been the game-winning touchdown. It was a very good look at it at the go-ahead point. So Rocky Mount's a very good team that's played and beaten a lot of very good teams in this Big East Conference. Of course, Northern Nash goes to Southern Nash next week as well. So it's really all the Nash County teams in this conference are going to have their say.
That's for sure. All right, Leica, we appreciate it. We're going to go to a quick break here, and then we're going to get right back to Clay Best. He's going to tell us all about that Rocky Mount Southern Nash game.
Thank you, Joel.
Don't fall for the myths. Get the facts about underage drinking.
Myth. Teens bounce back fast, and teenage athletes can perform just fine after a night of drinking alcohol. The fact is, alcohol can hinder athletic performance for up to 3 days, delaying recovery and causing long-term issues with muscle loss and weakness. But don't just take it from me.
Choosing not to drink as an underage athlete has really helped me significantly. I've been able to focus, keep my priorities straight, and it's helped me separate myself from, many other people.
Get more facts at talkitoutnc.org.
Welcome back to the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Again, Talk It Out NC has their fall giveaway going on right now. You can visit talkitoutnc.org to learn how you can be one of 6 lucky winners to get a $250 grocery gift card. We bring in Clay Best, who did have that Southern Nash Rocky Mount game. It is the Griffins who win, and they continue to stack up victories as they roll into the final weeks of the season, Clay.
Yeah, another solid win for Rocky Mount. Just you think 22-20, kind of a rivalry game. You're like, wow, this was exciting. And in fact, the second half was really there was not a lot going on until the fourth quarter. Rocky Mount leads 22-13 at the half. Southern Nash finally kind of grinds out a touchdown drive with about just before the end of the third quarter to get it to 22-20. Firebird defense really played well in the second half. I had Rocky Mount with 39 yards in the second half. And when you look at some of the talent and speed and effectiveness of that wing Rocky Mount attack, it's a real impressive effort by Southern. So Rocky Mount is just kind of plodding along. Southern's pounding 3 yards, 2 yards, 3 yards, 2 yards. Converts a couple of fourth downs on its last drive. Gets the ball inside the 20 with about a minute and a half left. And it's all of a sudden it's time for the Gryphons stars to show up. The two young men who were named to the East-West All-Star game this week, Tavares Parker and Micah Jones, lead that senior-laden defense to make plays. First, set up a 2nd and 4. Tavares makes a tackle for a 1-yard loss to put Southern in a 3rd and 6. So we see one of the rare passes of situations of the night. Southern drops back to pass, and Jones and Parker are two of the 3 players that combined to pull down the quarterback for a sack. Sets up 4th and long. Southern goes back to pass again. This time they have time. And it looks like there might be somebody open. Firebirds try to hit a crossing route across the middle of the field. And guess who kind of leaps up in the middle of that defense playing zone coverage to tip a pass away and make it incomplete? But Tavares Parker, and it's a 22-20 win for Rocky Mount. And just kind of a slug back and forth game. Two teams that are, of course, very familiar with each other. Two coaching staffs very familiar with each other. Run very similar offenses. Talented in a lot of the same ways. But just a huge win for Rocky Mount, and kind of one of those things where I'm sure Southern is thinking, we had our chance and we kind of let potentially a big one slip away.
Yeah, certainly a big win tonight for Rocky Mount, as we were just talking about that Northern Nash Hunt game. Rocky Mount 7-1 now after the 22-20 victory, 4-0 in league play in the Big East Conference. They have 2 big ones coming up. They go to that Hunt team next week, and then they have the big showdown in the final week of the season against Northern Nash. What's kind of the calling card of this Rocky Mount team that you think can take them through this gauntlet here, as they have this 3-week sprint, it feels like, to the postseason?
Coach Battle talked about the experience of of the players they have on defense, and Rocky Mount was a team that just didn't. They had a lot more penalties than they would have liked tonight. It's one of the things Coach Battle talked about, was asked him after the game about what is it going forward for this team. Well, you've got more big games coming. You just won a big one, but there's more to come. And he's like, we got to get Rocky Mount right. We weren't ourselves in the second half, and yet the old phrase winning time, when it became winning time, the Gryphons figured out how to win. One thing that really impressed me tonight from both teams, both Southern and Rocky Mount, was they tackle very well. Any of the 2-3 backs in that handle most of the ball carrying in these wing attacks can really churn. They can pop a run at any times, but there were very few tackles tonight on either side where it was a solo tackle. These young men were getting to the ball in bunches. There were 3 big play, I think 3 touchdowns that covered 45 or more yards tonight. One was a kind of a pop pass that Southern surprised Rocky Mount with, and then Parker had a long run, and Superior Mitchell had a long run for Rocky Mount as well. But aside from that, it was a lot of 3, 4, 5, 6 yard gains. And you look at Rocky Mount's results so far, and they still haven't given up more than 20 points to anybody this season. And in this age of scoring, that's an impressive feat, especially when you see they played Tarboro, and they played some other good teams as well. So Rocky Mount is that defense is not one that impresses you on the hoof, so to speak, or on the lineup card, or by the looks physically of them, but they're physical. They get to the ball. Like I said, they had the one kind of little mix up where they left the wing backs open down the field for the long passing play, but just solid all around.
Well, that's Clay Best. He had Rocky Mount's 22-20 win over Southern Nash tonight. You can go on HighSchoolOT.com and see the story from that one. Thanks, Clay.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at some undefeated teams that were in action tonight across the state of North Carolina. There were 24 entering week 9 of the season, and East Lincoln is one of the first ones to fall. Hickory, their defense holds in the fourth quarter. It was 38-28 entering the fourth, and that score sticks. A big win for Joe Glass and the Red Tornadoes. Ashbrook defeating Forest View tonight 27-6. Brevard defeating West Henderson 41-27. Providence Day, a big shutout against previously unbeaten Charlotte Latin 41-0. Cleveland defeating Southeast Raleigh 28-10. That's the 60th straight regular season victory for the Rams. Grimsley 48-14 over Page. High Point Christian continues to roll with a 61-6 win over South Wake. Hoggard defeating Laney 28-14. Tim Hauer broke that one down earlier in the show. 35-3 Huff over South Mecklenburg. Kip Pride defeating Southeast Halifax 50-0. Lewisburg defeating Roanoke Rapids 28-14. And Millbrook shutting out Enloe 49-0. It looks like the Wildcats have a good grasp of the conference there. Enloe 2 weeks ago 5-1, but the Wildcats take care of business tonight 49-0. I mentioned that Cleveland Southeast Raleigh game. We're going to bring in J. Mike Blake. He was on the call of that one for High School OT as part of the Alpaca Chicken Game of the Week. And J. Mike, 28 unanswered points for Cleveland tonight. It was a close game until late in that second half, and then that patented Rams offense, man, there's something about when they get into, Clay mentioned it a little bit about Rocky Mount, when it comes to winning time, nobody's better in the state than Scott Riley and his staff and his players know how to execute. Caleb Farrell was the star tonight, over 180 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns for Farrell, and I think if you would have told Coach E.J. Campbell over at Southeast that you would hold Owen Holbert to 6 completions and 35 yards, he'd say, sweet, we pulled off an upset win, the streak's over. Instead, it's a 28-10 win, miraculously still a 3-score victory for the Rams.
Yeah, and talked to Scott Riley after the game, the coach of the Cleveland Rams, and he said that last week's rushing totals against a very good Garner defense were kind of similar. So 285 yards is what I have Cleveland on the ground with tonight. Again, like you said, only 35 through the air. It just, like you said, when the chips are down, Cleveland finds a way to get it done. They were down 10-0 to start the game. They Southeast Raleigh kicks a field goal with about 10:05 left in the second quarter, and they get shut out the rest of the way. I mentioned on this show after week 3, seeing Cleveland against Northern Nash. Northern Nash had some weird plays in that game, but I was really we were talking about how is Cleveland, they still seem to be still Cleveland despite the heavy graduation losses. How are they doing it? I said that front 7 is really good, and they really stepped up tonight against Southeast Raleigh. It's not easy to go in against the double-headed monster at running back Christian Freeman and James Adams IV. It's not easy to go against Tydreek Powell Jr. to quarterback, but they picked off Powell twice. They held Freeman to 90 yards. He got a lot of those in the last drive. I think he probably had about 60 going into that last drive. And Adams only had 20 yards. So Cleveland defense got it done in clutch time, shutting out Southeast for essentially the last 3 quarters. And then there was a spark. So this game had a long delay with an injury that I'll write about tonight, and scary moment. But Porter Bennett reels off I think a 29-yard run, kind of the first play back after the game stopped for 30 minutes. And it led the Cleveland sideline. You could almost kind of sense they're fired up, they're focused, they're not losing this game. They were still down at that point, but just every drive after that felt so different from every other Cleveland drive the whole rest of the game. Up until that point, the only scoring drive they had was when they got the ball on the 9-yard line after a block punt, and they made Southeast Raleigh pay. So that was all their offense could really muster. They were sputtering, and then that big run by Porter Bennett, he had 76 yards as the second running back tonight, and then all of a sudden here come the Rams, and they just had more gas left at the end than did Southeast Raleigh. So emotional win. They had to kind of put aside, knowing that their teammate's going to be okay, and then here they come. They rally in a big way. I think it's closer than the 28-10 score indicates for sure. However, it's a big win, big statement win. You have to tip your hat to Cleveland for being able to come back in this one in a commanding way.
The Rams, they bend, but they don't break. 2 weeks from now, though, they have the big showdown against Clayton, and a lot of people felt if there's going to be 1 year where potentially the Comets get the Rams, it was going to be this season, because Cleveland lost all this, prolific passing, and they lost all this prolific receiving, and it's looking like, as always, the Comets will come into this match facing an unbeaten Cleveland team. The last 2 meetings between these two teams have been epic. Both have been decided by 2 points. 2 years ago, Cleveland had the walk-off Hail Mary where the kid went up in traffic and mossed it as time expired to win. You have last year where Cleveland in a shootout pulls it out by 2. What can we expect here? Because this is arguably the best shot Clayton has to land that knockout punch on the Rams, but you can never pick against this Cleveland team because they never go away.
I think defensively, this is the best Cleveland team in maybe since the state runner-up version. And I think that is going to be the key. I don't think you're going to see no one can keep, if it's a track meet, you can't keep the pace with Cleveland because they won't allow you to get off the blocks, if you will. You're going to keep the track metaphor going there. However, I think, maybe the trade-off is maybe they're not as explosive as they were last year. But then again, tonight was probably the least explosive they've been all season. Hat tip to Southeast Raleigh. Because even last week against Garner, they got the offense going in second half. They had 7 at halftime. They finished with 49. I think the defense sets them apart and probably gives them the leg up, more 2 legs up going into that game against Clayton. Anything can happen in a rivalry game, and it's definitely kind of taken a life of its own in these last couple of years. But I do think that Cleveland's the story for me is that front seven had contained Christian Freeman, who's one of the best running backs that I've seen in the last couple of seasons, but contained him for almost the entire night. And if you start getting penalties, which Southeast Raleigh did, it wasn't like Southeast Raleigh could not move the ball at all the rest of the game. But when they did, they got negated by these holding penalties. They held them back. Even their field goal was a result of a callback touchdown. When you start to do that, Cleveland's okay, now it's 1st and 15. Now it's 1st and 20. You're definitely punting this ball now. So I think that gives them the edge. And I think, again, 7A East playoffs, whether it's them or Gibbons or one of the other Greater Neuse River teams, even the talented Cape Fear, whatever comes out of the 7A East playoffs, they're sitting pretty at that 1 seed for a reason.
Well, that's J. Mike Blake. He was on the call tonight for the Alpaca Chicken Game of the Week as Cleveland picked up a 28-10 victory over Southeast Raleigh. Thanks, J. Mike.
No problem.
One more guest here before we go on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. We're going to bring in Logan Carter, who took in some action out in the Triad tonight, took in Mount Tabor and Oak Grove. Logan, you had a big one tonight. We had talked about it last week a little bit with the news surrounding JB Shabazz. This was a big one, And how did it end up working out tonight in that Mount Tabor Oak Grove game? Oh, let's see. We got you. There we go. We got you now, Logan.
There we go.
How'd
Now
your
I
game
can
go
hear
tonight?
you. It
How'd
was
your game go
good.
tonight?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, so ironically, this is the closest game to my house all year, and it turns out to be the longest. And I'm getting back at 11:34. I think I got back from Mallard Creek a little earlier than this, but it was a great game nonetheless between Oak Grove and Mount Tabor. Oak Grove ended up defeating the Spartans 52-42. It was just a offensive onslaught tonight. Oak Grove's defense ended up making several stops in the second half. Mount Tabor was leading for most of the game in the first half. They were leading, I think, 34-24 after they scored right out of halftime. And after that, Grayson Treadway in the run game, they just dominated. He came out and hit Cam Kennedy for a touchdown. And then right after that, it was 3 rushing touchdowns. Ben Bolware, Kamari McFadden, Graham Binkley. All 3 of those guys scored, and just Mount Tabor just couldn't respond. Oak Grove took the adversity at halftime, being down, and just really dominated Mount Tabor. They were very frustrated on the sideline. I do want to give a shout out to Mount Tabor's quarterback, Kingston Brown, with 4 touchdown passes tonight. He played a fantastic game. But Mount Tabor's really young, and I think that was one of the biggest things. You had a seasoned team at Oak Grove who knew how to deal with the adversity. And then when Mount Tabor went down, a little bit of more struggles and emotions on the sideline tonight. So they're going to be a great team, down the road. They have a lot of sophomores and freshmen.
2 more weeks to go in this regular season for this Oak Grove team. Obviously, they host Glenn next week. That feels like it could be a winnable game for the Grizzlies. And then they have the big one on October 31st on Halloween night against North Davidson. How do the Grizzlies really lock in and kind of get a consistent offensive attack over these last couple of weeks? Because all of their wins this season, all 5 of them now, have come when they score 48-plus points. When they score under 48 points, they have not won a game this year. So every win for them this year, they've found the end zone numerous times, 6, 7, 8 times in a game. How important is it for that Oak Grove offense?
Yeah, I got to talk about a guy who scored 2 touchdowns early on for Oak Grove, and that is Jaquan Clay, wide receiver, number 15. Grayson Treadway threw two bombs up in the air to him, and he went up and got it. Coach Creason talked with Rich in our post-game interview, and I think that's where a lot of their offense is going to be with Jaquan Clay. He mossed a kid tonight, really tall, athletic wide receiver for the Grizzlies, and just fantastic. I mean, he actually ended up getting the turnover to seal the game. They sent him out there on defense as a defensive end, and he actually got the fumble recovery, and it's just incredible. He's an incredible athlete, and I think after talking to offensive coordinator Jared Rothfuss, I talked to him after the game, and this is a guy that can really help the offense, like you said, just continue this dominance to where they're scoring 40-plus points and they're winning consecutive games. This is a guy that I think they are learning. Grayson Treadway can throw it up, and this guy's going to go and get it, or go across the middle of the field and make a big time play.
Well, that's high school OT contributor Logan Carter. He took in Oak Grove's win over Mount Tabor tonight. Later tonight, you'll be able to see highlights from that game and read more about the big win for the Grizzlies. Thanks, Logan.
Thanks, Evan.
Let's go to some more undefeated scores from around the state of North Carolina here on the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. The Talk It Out NC statewide scoreboard is your home for the most up-to-date scores and results from across North Carolina. Some more teams in the unbeaten watch. It includes Northside out of Pinetown picking up a 44-33 win over East Carteret. Pender, Tim Hauer mentioned them earlier in this week. They got a big game coming up next week, but tonight they win 44-6 against South Lenoir. South Davidson, what a story there. South Davidson 43-13, a big win over North Stokes. They remain unbeaten. Watauga over Alexander Central. It's crazy to say a 22-point win was close, but by the Pioneer standards, this fall it certainly is. Jacksonville defeating South Central. Cary Christian defeating Faith Christian, and then Jordan a 35-6 win over Panther Creek. That'll do it for tonight's edition of the High School OT postgame show presented by Talk It Out NC. Again, head over to talkitoutnc.org. Talkitoutnc.org is where you can get all of the resources and all of the tools that you need to start the conversation with your peers or with your own child to stop underage drinking. Visit Talk It Out NC, start the conversation today, and help stop underage drinking. For Evan Moesta, Joel Bryant, J. Mike Blake, and everybody else here at High School OT, we wish you a happy week number 9 and a happy weekend. Thanks for tuning in tonight.